let us rejoice and be glad in it. Beautiful drive coming up here this morning from King City, and just feeling that water and the nice fresh air off the water is so beautiful. And many times I've come to Barrie. I live in King City in Newmarket. Originally, I'm from the Maritimes. I come from Newfoundland, and we grow up near water, spend a lot of time near water. So there's times I have to come up here and just drink in the water and feel the air from the water. Many times I've come up here and looked at the beauty of the lakes and the water and the surroundings, but you know, I missed something, and I'm so thankful this morning that God has brought me to Collier Street, is that right? United Church, because I look at the grandeur and the beauty of this church this morning, and what an opportunity to come in and just see how beautiful this building is today. And wow, amazing. So it's just, you know, a lot of churches like this now. And so important to keep the history of this church and this building and just to be here today. So thank you so much for having us come this morning and bringing a couple of the students with me. And I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about Teen Challenge. And first question I like to ask is that how many here in the congregation has never heard about Teen Challenge? Okay, wow, that's almost a third of the congregation. So this morning I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Teen Challenge. And like the Reverend said, after our service is over, we have a table and a video and some handouts and pamphlets that also will give you a little bit more awareness about Teen Challenge. What we are is that Teen Challenge is an international ministry all over the world. We are a nonprofit, faith-based drug and alcohol rehab center. We, right now, we have a women's center that are only one in Canada, and we are located in King City, Aurora, and we have a residential building there. And the girls come in, and they spend 1 year with us. So when they come into Teen Challenge, they give up 12 months of their lives to come in and live in a residential environment. They give up their cell phone, radio, TV, everything when they come in, and they totally concentrate on recovery and getting free from their addiction. Our program has a balance of addiction counselors. We have trained addiction counselors who the girls work with every week. Also, we have a very we have a Christian education program that the girls come into, and they learn basic Bible principles, basic Bible training. And I don't know how many people here are aware of addiction, but lots of times addiction is a fire. It's a smoke to a fire of a lot of different root issues that are happening in people's lives. And we believe of the power of the Holy Spirit, and we believe that God brings healing as we open up ourselves. And God starts dealing with those root issues, and through the counseling and the ministry of the Holy Spirit, that healing starts to come in here. A lot of time, addiction is a Band-Aid to a more serious infection, and that's why sometimes it takes 12 months to get to the issues. We're living in a society today, and I'm sure living in Barrie, you don't have to go very far to see what's going on around us. And we have a lot of girls that come in from Barrie, a lot of girls that come in that got into addiction up here and have come into our program. But we know that it takes time to deal with the issues and why people fall into addiction. We live in a society where women are abused, ostracized. A lot of our women come out of prostitution. A lot of our moms, a lot have been abused by men, rejected by their fathers. Just a whole lot of stuff they carry with them when they come in. But you know, as time goes on, God starts doing a work in their lives, and the healing begins, and the transformation takes place. And I run the food services there, and sometimes I teach. But the miracle is that when you see these precious girls, and you start seeing a change in them, and you start seeing God doing things in their lives, and as the months go on, all those chains of addiction and bondage start to drop off, and anyway, they find freedom. And this morning, you're going to hear their stories of freedom and just what God has done in their life. First, I want to. We have the girls when we go around to different churches. The girls share their story and share a little bit of a testimony of where they were, where they are at today, and what God has done for them. And this morning, I want these girls to share with you. And the first one that I'm going to ask to come up this morning is Tashina. Come on up, Tashina. I've known Tashina for a few years. And wonderful, wonderful girl, and it's amazing. She just phase promoted. So we have like 4 different sections to our program. And is it the first 4 months, Tashina? So Tashina is just phase promoted. Tashina hails from Northern Ontario, and I've always said to Tashina that God has a call in her life to work with these women and women of the First Nation. And I believe that God's preparing her at Teen Challenge for the next venture of her journey. And she has a special place in all of our hearts, and we just love her so much. God bless you, my love.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. You guys are so blessed with a beautiful church. If you were able, if you were ever to come up to me anytime in the past and tell me that my broken heart was a part of God's sovereign plan, chances were I diagnosed you delusional. Now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. Philippians 1:12. Good morning. My name is Tashina, and I am 29 years old. A single mother to one handsome prince whom I love so dearly. I come from Saskatchewan First Nation, Ontario, and this is my story. What started off as a story of damnation turned out to be a proof of God's redemption. Life was hard from the beginning. I was born to parents who struggled with addiction, and I was neglected as a result. CAS apprehended me from my mom at the age of 2, along with my little sister, whom I was found to be mothering. I bounced from one foster home to another, a total of 18 by the end of the year. I became crown ward and was adopted to a family of 8 by the age of 3. I experienced a lot of unpleasant stuff in my home. Physical abuse was a norm, and in turn, beating my younger siblings became a vicious cycle. I was bullied every day at school. I began to hate myself, my parents, and those who hurt me. I hated those who stripped off my innocence. By the age of 9, I had said I didn't want to live anymore. Shame, guilt, unwanted, uncared for, unloved, unworthy, and rejected was what I believed about myself. I became rebellious. I puffed my first cigarette by this time. In my teen years, I had so badly wanted to fit in and be part of the in crowd. Marijuana was introduced to me. I hated the high. I then befriended ladies that would get attention from guys. I was introduced to alcohol, and I fell in love with it. I hated being used by guys, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be cast out. In the year 2006, my world crashed when I lost my brother tragically. I spiraled into depression and alcoholism. I decided I would attend my first treatment program, which I faithfully completed. After this, I moved to the city of Timmins, Ontario, where I went back to high school and got my diploma. I still battled addiction, and I did things I've never imagined myself doing to support it. I fell in love with a guy who introduced me to cocaine. I found out that my knight in shining armor was HIV positive. I lived in torment after this, believing I was HIV positive. It is only by God's grace and mercy I stand here today, clean from it. Shortly after this, I hit rock bottom when I lost my adopted father, who was the glue that kept me together, to a heart attack. I fell apart, and out of sheer desperation, I gave my heart to the Lord. However, I backslid from him and went my own way. I became a functioning alcoholic, completed 2.5 years of college studying indigenous wellness and addiction prevention. Because my lifestyle was promoting addiction, I decided to drop out in the last semester with a GPA of 3.92. I plan on going back to college to complete the required 4 credits I need to obtain my dual diploma. I became a full-time alcoholic and one day found myself waking up in the ICU after having a massive seizure that nearly cost me my life due to severe withdrawal. My sister pleaded with me to get help. I agreed, and in my research found out about Teen Challenge. On September 2013, I walked through the doors of Teen Challenge with every intention to complete the program. Unfortunately, after 6 months, I decided to leave. I found myself spiraling down once again. Scripture says in Proverbs 26:11, "A dog returns back to its vomit, so fools repeat their folly." I was back to abusing substances and found myself in trouble with the law. I became suicidal, and as a result, I ended up in a psych ward where I was diagnosed with depression. During my stay in the hospital, I made plans to come back to Teen Challenge. My plans were interrupted when I found out I was pregnant. My baby's dad abandoned me and I was homeless. I don't know how I did it, but I managed to stay clean throughout my entire pregnancy. My prince entered the world in April of 2015, and I proudly named him Nehemiah, which means comfort of Yahweh. For God truly comforted me through my son, and I made a promise to not let him go through what I went through. I felt like a failure when Nehemiah was apprehended from me when he was 3 months old. I fought to get him back, only for this to become a vicious cycle. I completed a number of various rehab centers in the following years, but never had victory over my addiction. My son was reapprehended on November of 2016 for the 4th time. At this point, I felt hopeless. I started making plans to have my son adopted out so I could end my life. I wanted him to go into a loving home. I jumped in another relationship with an abusive boyfriend who introduced me to speed. I loved how numb I felt, and I basically gave up on life. But deep down in my heart, I knew I still truly cared for my son. Once again, I reached out and called Teen Challenge. Out of desperation, I took a step of faith without realizing it. It was now a life and death decision because I had overdosed on pain medication, wanting to end my life. I cried out, and God heard my cry. On January 22, this year, I re-entered through the doors of Teen Challenge, vowing I wasn't going to rededicate my life back to the Lord. But in the afternoon of January 25, I couldn't resist Jesus' calling anymore, and I found myself fully surrendering my life back to him. I turned my back on the Lord, and the world had turned its back on me. It wasn't until I was tired of looking at their backs I turned my back on them to find God staring at me right in the face, waiting patiently on me. I now believe with all my heart that God had his hand of protection over me, for there is no way on this earth I should be here in front of you this day sharing this marvelous testimony. If God hadn't protected me all along, he has never left nor forsaken me. For Bible says in Jeremiah that he is married to the backslider. God in all his love and mercy has handpicked me by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of my testimony to advance his kingdom. For he chosen the foolish thing of this world to shame the wise, 1 Corinthians 1:27. I'm excited to come alongside God and advance his kingdom, and most importantly, to accept all that he has in store for me in Nehemiah. For it is written in 1 Corinthians 2:9, no eye has seen, and no ear has heard, and no mind has been able to conceive the things God has for those who love him. I put on my shoes of righteousness and tied them up tightly to endure this race until the coming of Christ. I look forward to that day. Scripture tells us that God will wipe away every tear from our eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the older things have passed away. Revelation 21:4. I long to sit on Jesus' lap as he wipes away my tears. I will look upon his face and forget all I went through. I praise you, Father, that you turned around what the devil meant for evil, for your glory, for who you set free is free indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tashina. That's the first time I've heard her testimony since she decided to come back into Teen Challenge. And God bless you, my dear. God bless you. Teen Challenge was started by a man named David Wilkerson. And there's a book that's been written and called Crossing the Switchblade. And it's been around for a number of years. Teen Challenge has been around probably 60 years now. We have some copies of the book back at our table, so if anyone would like to take one home, you're more than welcome. Anyway, David Wilkerson was this tall, lanky, skinny preacher somewhere down in Tennessee, and he pastored a little country church. And anyway, he felt the stirring and the call of God to go into the inner cities of New York to work with the street gangs. So there was a movie out many years ago called The Crossing the Switchblade. Anyway, he obeyed the call of God. His wife looked at him and thought he was a little bit crazy. Why are you going in there? Apparently his wife had a baby when he was in there. But anyway, God called him on the streets of New York City, in the area where there was a lot of Puerto Ricans and a lot of street gangs. And he went in there and he started a little church. And he got right out with the people and right out in the rawness of what was going on in those street gangs. There was a man named Nicky Cruz who was the leader of a Puerto Rican street gang and a drug dealer and a criminal and the worst of the worst. Anyway, David Wilkerson built a relationship with Nicky Cruz. Eventually, Nicky Cruz came to the Lord. With that, his whole gang came to the Lord. And that's how Teen Challenge started. By one man and his obedience to go into the inner cities of New York City to minister to the gangs. There was times he came close to death. They wanted to kill him, but God's protection was upon him. And from that, Teen Challenge grew into an international drug and rehab center. And right now we have centers all across Canada. We have a men's center in London. We can house about 50 men down there. And our women's center, we can take up to 20. We have centers in Russia. We have centers in Jamaica. We have centers in different parts of Ukraine, different parts of Europe. Right now, we're looking at putting a women's center in Saskatchewan. The building is up, and we're hoping to getting that open next year. And we're also looking at putting a women's center in St. John's, Newfoundland, and we're hoping that that'll be up and running soon. And as like I said, the epidemics of drugs right now is right across our land. I look at all of you this morning. There are moms, there are grandmothers here, there are aunts and uncles. How many of you know someone in addiction? Yes, there's hands up in our congregation, right? One time the addict was a person that lived on the street. You know, they were down and out. You'd see them, you'd pass them by, and you say, oh, they're a drug addict. But now we're living in a society where the drug addict becomes our sons, our daughters, our grandkids, our like I said, our children. The epidemics of drugs, and you know, we can just go on the streets of Barrie this morning, and I don't have to tell you what I just saw just driving up Dunlop Street this morning, and you can tell some of these people were probably up partying and out all night. So it's around us everywhere. And that's why I thank God for the ministry of Teen Challenge. I thank God for the opportunity I have every day that I can work with these women at Teen Challenge. And I run all the food services. Like I said, I feed them, but I feed them with words of encouragement and speaking life into them and just helping them to grow in the Lord. So Teen Challenge is, like I said, we help these women, and we are a nonprofit. We are a nonprofit organization. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So it's people like you who help us. We have no government funding. We're totally reliant on our donors and people of faith who help us. So, you know, that's what keeps us going. But also thank God for what he gives us and what he brings in and how he uses people like you and churches and to help people. And I always say to these girls, we cannot take anything for granted because money is tight. And for people to give money, they got to dig down into their pockets. It don't come by air. People give. And we're so thankful that people give to this ministry and help us going, that we can help change lives for Teen Challenge for the glory of God. Now Peniel is coming to share her story. Come on up, Peniel. And Peniel graduates in July. She's almost there. And Peniel is from Toronto, right? Down in Toronto, Scarborough. 11 months ago, I saw a girl coming into our program that was broken and scarred and hiding in a corner, afraid, didn't want to talk to anybody, totally shut off from the world, carrying so much pain and so much hurt. And today I see a young woman full of Jesus and full of joy and full of love. And I remember the first day I saw her smile, and I think we were serving coffee or hot chocolate or something. And she looked at me, hi, Miss Deb, how are you today? And I saw those pearly teeth she has, those big smile, and you'll see her smile. And you know something? She's had her rough days. It's not easy when you have to give up a year of your life and days you just feel stuff you don't want to feel. But you know, through it all, Peniel has kept her smile. And she's been such an encouragement to the other girls that come in. And I've heard her talk to them and encourage them and pray with them and just encourage them to keep on going. So she's almost done, and after Teen Challenge, after 12 months, the girls can come and do a 6-month internship. And the 6-month internship, they live in the different part of the dorm, but they also have freedom. They can go home on weekends, and they can find a church, and you know, they can come and go, and they work. It helps them to get a work ethic. And they work. So we're hoping, and we talked about in the car this morning, that Peniel will stay with us and do that internship, because I know she can be such a powerful force and such an encouragement to the girls of what God has done in her life. And we're going to get her to share. She's so humble and very shy. You want to use this one, love, or that one?
It's okay.
Okay, whatever you
Hello?
want to, that's fine.
Hello.
Just put it into your mouth.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Sorry about that. Hello? Okay. Hello, my name is Peniel. I was born and raised in Toronto. Growing up in the church, I remember the very first time when I was just 4 years old, going up to the altar when they asked who would like to get prayed for. Then they prophesied over my life, saying I would lead many to Christ and would become a pastor. I was unaware of what this all meant at the time, but I believe that God still has that promise for my life. It still stands. One of my pastors had explained to me that I would be like an arrow shooting at the enemies. As I would live on the streets, my enemies grew larger and larger. Was I standing firm on my Father's word? No, I was fighting back. Before moving to Toronto, my dad was a pastor and my mom sang in the choir in Ethiopia. I knew God had a plan for me and my family, but darkness was the only thing I could see. I understood somehow God, my King, could be the light of my life, but I wasn't trusting him enough to take the flashlight, turn it on, and let him lead. Why did I not believe him? Why was I doubting within? Why did I let the enemy enter in? Instead of pleasing God, I was living to please man. For 8 years, I was filled with anger and bitterness. I allowed Satan to control me and destroy my mind and body. If I wasn't going to harm somebody, I was going to harm myself. I had a serious conflict with drinking and did not know my limit. Eventually, I tried cocaine. I was living with my mother on the 16th floor of a building. Then shortly after, I moved in with my sister, who lived on the 4th floor of another building. One night, after using drugs and alcohol, I entered my home and jumped off the balcony. Holding on to the edge with my legs hanging, I yelled, "I'm stronger than this," but I actually wasn't. Falling to the ground, I thought this was the end of my life. Feeling like my whole body was on fire, blood covering my face, I went to the hospital for help. I was left with a couple scars on my face and a fractured wrist. God preserved my life. God has allowed me to go through the fire to reveal to me that he loves me and will always protect me. He will never hurt me. According to his word, God has given me full permission to trample on snakes and scorpions. I used to have no confidence in myself, but now I know my Father calls me his precious daughter. I am a child of God, a daughter of the King. My confidence now lies in Jesus Christ. I left my family's home because they did not condone my lifestyle or addiction. I felt a huge void. I thought drinks and men would help fill this emptiness. I eventually allowed a man into my life, and our relationship was toxic. He abused me to the point where he choked me until I passed out. I was in shock as I got up from the hallway floor. I couldn't live like this anymore. I moved out and got a place of my own. I thought, finally, I'm at peace. But I was completely deceived. The abusive man was still threatening to take my life, and he only lived one street away. After refusing to take my medication consistently, I knew my health was on the line, so I chose to admit myself to the hospital once again in October 2016. During my stay there, my mother suggested Teen Challenge to me. I quickly agreed. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was definitely what God wanted. I was hoping to transition from the hospital directly to rehab. However, the staff there did not agree, and they released me. After years of feeling neglected and unwanted, both my loving mother and sister welcomed me to their home. For the first time in many years, my mother wanted me to stay at her place. I knew I was doing something right. Throughout the process of getting into Teen Challenge, I quit using drugs and alcohol. It was a success, although it was tough. Since God's arms are always open, that's where I continue to run, worshiping God and praying in the corner of my mom's room every night. I also began praying about the men who were abusive towards me. A couple weeks later, I received an apology from the man who strangled me. I must forgive him and love him. God has filled me with love and compassion. I showed him mercy because the Son of God is what sets me free from bondages. On July 4th, 2017, I walked into the doors of Teen Challenge. I will not stray even when God delays. I am now sober for 16 months. I have decided to follow Jesus, no turning back. Jesus did not take back his promise from me. He never lies. When I've had enough, he never gives up. I love myself and who God has created me to be. Because of the prayers and support of my family and church family, I can stand before you today to share this testimony. Jesus spoke to me through a family friend and explained the years that Satan has taken from me, the Lord will restore. Joel 2:25 says, I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten. He also stated that the Lord's hand is upon me. 1 John 4:4, greater is he who is in me than he who is in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, my dear. Bless you. Thank you, Peniel. God bless you. Like I just talked about a little while ago about Teen Challenge, we are a total nonprofit, faith-based, and people help us out financially. But the most important thing that people help us out, Teen Challenge, is prayerfully. We need as many prayers as we can get for our ministry, because you realize that we are working at the crossroads of people's lives. Like Tashina said, it could be life or death. We've seen situations We know if girls leave the program, they're not going to make it. They go back into drugs, and there's life or death. It costs, when a student comes into Teen Challenge, it costs them $1,000 to come in. So most secular drug rehabs, you might have to pay $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 to come in. So when they come in, they bring their $1,000, and they don't have to worry about anything else, only toiletries till they graduate. So God is good. He looks after them, and when they leave, that's it. They owe no debt or no expenses. It's all finished. It's all done. So that's not bad for 1 year of 3 meals a day, 2 snacks, everything you want, lots of stuff for $1,000. So that's how good God is. And one way we support our ministry of Teen Challenge is through sponsorship. And for $40 a month, you can sponsor a girl at Teen Challenge. So if God should lay that on your heart today, any sponsors? We have any sponsors here in the congregation? Okay, so if God should lay this on your heart today, after the service is over, you can come and see us. And if you'd like to sponsor someone for $40 a month, the price of a Tim Hortons, or I shouldn't say Starbucks, that's more expensive, but you can sponsor a girl for $40 a month, and we give you their card that you can take home. And you know, the sponsorship I've seen with the girls is not all about the money, but also it's about the support that you give these girls. And I've seen them at times when they've been really discouraged or having a really bad day, and they want to leave, they want to go home, and all of a sudden they get a card from a sponsor with a little note or a little Bible verse or a little bookmark in it, and it's just what they needed for that day. And also, you're welcome to come to their grad. We're not that far, so when they graduate, a lot of the sponsors, you get an invitation, and you get, they'll send you information on the girls that you can come down. So if you feel to go that way, we're the same as like World Vision or some of the, the nonprofits, right? You get a girl. If she graduates, then you get someone else, all right? So this is Megan, and also this is Tashina. This is her sponsorship card. And also, if you have an old car somewhere you don't want, we'll take your old cars. And we take them. We have a body shop down in London, and they sometimes refurbish them, they sell them, but sometimes they just take the parts off them, and that helps generate our industry. And also, they just opened a thrift store down there. And so we also try ourselves to generate revenue for Teen Challenge. So once again, very thankful today that your church has opened up your doors on this beautiful Sunday summer morning to welcome us in. If there's anyone after the service, some of you have never heard of the Teen Challenge. If you have any questions, things you'd like to know, you're more than welcome to come and ask us at the table, and I will try my best to answer those questions for you. So please come and say hi to us, say hi to the girls. Make yourself known. Oh, yes, also there's a brochure that went out, so if you're interested in sponsorship or giving a little donation or whatever, you can, it's all there in the brochure. But we would also like to meet you today, so just come back to see us and say hi. And if you know anyone that's in addiction that needs some help, you can go to our website, Teen Challenge Canada, and all the information is there of how to do the application process and go through it. It won't happen in the day. It takes a little bit of time because you have to have medical records and things like that. But our doors are open to anybody of any faith, any denomination, any walk of life to come in and to get help and to help with Teen Challenge. And it's amazing how many people that have come to our program who have heard through people like you when we've gone out on outreaches to churches and found out about Teen Challenge, and they've passed it on. So if you want to take a book or anything and pass it on to someone you know. And we have women between the ages of 19 and 60. So because it's Teen Challenge, it's not teenagers. That was the name that David Wilkerson put on it. But we have women from all ages, all ages that come into our program and graduate. So it's just not teens, it's anybody. You can come in, we'll take you if you're 80, I suppose. But anyway, our doors are open to anybody, okay? So I'm going to turn it back to you, and thank you again. Thank you so much.